Bay-Westfield for March 14th, 2022 to order at 7 o'clock p.m. We respectfully acknowledge that Grand Bay-Westfield exists on the traditional Woolastoqua land. The lands of Wabanaki people are recognized in a series of peace and friendship treaties to establish an ongoing relationship of peace, friendship, and mutual respect between equal nations. The river that runs by our town is known as Woolastoq, along which live Woolastoqua, the people of the beautiful and bountiful river. We, the staff and elected representatives, pay respect to the elders, past and present, and descendants of this land. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I was honored today to MC a significant Canada Community Buildings Fund announcement at our own beautiful Brundage Point River Centre alongside MP Wayne Long, our MLA Bill Oliver, who is with us here tonight, and Minister Arlene Dunn. This $5.7 million invested in the southwestern region of our province emphasizes how working together and collaborating with all different levels of government is essential for the growth and sustainability of our communities. An investment like this is good news for the southern part of our province and these successful project proponents. This is a wonderful announcement for all communities involved. Thank you to Bill and Wayne for your commitment to our region. In other news, we are in the middle of the name submission process for Entity 51. As we know, Entity 51 is a temporary name assigned by the province for the two areas joined together, Grand Bay-Westfield and a portion of the LSD of Westfield West. There have been, of course, many questions on the process. As a clarification, this process is to determine a name for the governing body of Entity 51 only, which will include the communities of Grand Bay-Westfield, Nerepis, and the properties along Campbell Road. Nerepis and Grand Bay-Westfield will continue to be the names of these respective communities. The province has confirmed that there will be no address changes required for driver's license or Medicare, as the community names within the boundaries of Entity 51 will remain. The deadline to submit name ideas for Entity 51 is March 28, 2022. All information on how to participate can be found on our dedicated website, entity51.ca. We also have a dedicated, detailed FAQ on the site, which is a helpful resource if you have any questions on the process. And you can always reach out to communications@towngbw.ca if you have any further questions. Record of attendance. Let the record reflect we have full attendance around the council table this evening. And I've already mentioned it, but I'd also like to acknowledge the attendance of our MLA Speaker, Bill Oliver. Thank you, Ms. Speaker, for being here with us tonight. Oh, and that's right, we also have the naming committee for Entity 51 here with us this evening, so thank you everyone for joining us. Oh, and we have the chair of PAC here with us tonight too. Nice to see you, Jim. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, actually, I would like to take a minute and acknowledge that we do have a full house for the first time in a long time. So it's nice to see people other than just council and the leadership team here in the room with us. So thank you everyone for coming and joining us here this evening. Item 5, agenda approval. The motion is the Council of the Town of Grand Bay-Westfield approve the agenda of March 14th, 2022 with the addition of 11D, Point Pro generating license application process and public hearing as presented. Thank you, Councillor Bailman. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Day. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you. Item 6, disclosure of conflict of interest. Are there any? There being none, we'll move on to item 7, public hearings, presentations, delegations, petitions. 7A, Operation White Heart. We have Gary Brown here to present to us. Gary, the floor is yours.
So, this is my first time doing this. So you put me on the spot.
We're thrilled to have you here, Gary.
Yeah. I do have some printouts here. Is it okay to pass them out or no?
Yeah, sure.
Did y'all, they all see the email? Did you, sir? That was sent,
Yeah, they have
it.
some have, some haven't, but this is more, I'll just put one here. In case I don't have enough. This is give you a better idea than what the email would give you because I put a little extra in it, right? What it is for mental health awareness, suicide prevention. It's a big I figure it's gonna be a big project, and with your help, we'll make it bigger.
Thank you.
Welcome. You're welcome. Well, is that enough? I'll give you a second to read it, and then I'll,
You did this already in one of the communities, didn't you?
pardon me?
You did this in one of our.
That park, I did that last year, yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
That's called the Giant Steps Wildlife Park. I created that, and then we got Maddie Murphy and Carson White, as well as many other sites. So what's written there kind of describes a little better than the email did. So what I'm asking today is, I'm trying to get municipalities to come on board with this here project. What that notice is offering is a 3-foot white heart on people's landscaping, and I have about 50 to do already on people's properties, so it's off to a good start. So I'm hoping the municipalities will come on board, and you can go with a 3-foot heart, but I'm hoping municipalities will go with a 6 or 8 foot heart. So you got the parks crew to do that for you, right? These 3-foot ones I'm doing myself, so I got a lot of work ahead of me, besides my business, so. But that's the main idea why I come here. Nancy Grant, I was talking to her, and she put hers to the parks already. And he just wants to wait and see what other municipalities are going to do for size. So once I get other municipalities in, we can agree on a size if you want to go with that size. Like I'm thinking 6 to 8 foot size would be nice. That one there in the picture is a 16 footer. Right? And that costs about $200 with the white rock alone, plus other rock. So the 3-foot rock in people's lawns is only going to be like $25 for the rock. And you just stuff the heart out. Put some quarter minus on the bottom, temper it, put the white rock on top, and you got a beautiful piece of landscaping, right? It's a good awareness project there, because I mean, people are going to walk down the street and they're going to see these popping up all over the place, and they're going to get taught. We need to keep the conversation going about mental health and suicide prevention. So if people start seeing these hearts popping up, and they get one, and they keep popping up, and then people are just going to be talking about it, and we can't let it die. Like we have Health Talk one day a year, and Suicide Prevention Day one day a year, but it's going to be an everyday thing, right? So that's my proposal to you. If you got any questions, I can answer them.
Thank you, Gary. Maybe you could tell council and the people that are listening at home a little bit about your previous work in mental health awareness and suicide prevention.
Okay, so this is for you, Miss Merrifield. Can I bring that up to you? So this is a shirt. Starting last year, I sold these shirts to raise money for suicide prevention and assist training, and I sold about 500 of these. And an organization called thank you, K9 Therapy New Brunswick paid for that for Brittany because they think you're great. Anyway, that's one of my first projects there. And like I said, I put 37 people through the course, so I think that was pretty successful. And the second one was the Giant Steps Wildlife Park. It's at the Crescent Valley Gospel Center on the city's north end of St. John. And it's a picture of, we got the picture here, but you don't, but in the picture you'll see a big mural on a brick wall.
Yes.
Okay, and the mural just depicts the chance of hope and despair, and the heart is all about hope. The benches I had a friend of mine design. We have the benches, wooden benches with a concrete ribbon on each end, so it symbolizes mental health ribbon. And we have Maddie Murphy's ribbon on the wall separate there. So yeah, that's my progress. Our progress we've done so far. And this one here, I think is going to be bigger than that. So I hope we can work something out here.
Thanks, Gary. Do we, Councilor McIntosh Lawrence?
Thank you, Gary. This is a really great project. I'm just wondering if we're interested how we would go about doing this. Who would we contact you and set up an appointment, or?
Well, if you want me to do it, like, I could, but I'm thinking, I mean, it's Dallas and put it to the Parks Department, because they probably have more experience with doing it, so.
Okay.
Like, I can do it in a way that I don't care about, and I'll do it the same way for everybody, because I have a template cut out for it, so I can make the same size and everything.
Okay.
But they would know that's the best way to do it. Like, myself, when I do it, I'm gonna dig down, with the big one there, I dug down 6 inches, because I had a lot of rock donated to fill it and compact it. So it's 3 foot hard. What I'll be doing is I'll be digging down about 3 to 4 inches, putting in some quarter minus, temper it, and bring it up to a level. And then I can put the white rock on top of that, maybe about 1 inch or 2 inches of white rock. So I get the white rock. We get that at the. Usually get it from John Jarvis. John works for me a lot. He's a great guy, right? So white rock, you can get that for about $7 a bag. So what I'm telling people, residents, that I will pay, or I won't pay, but they have to pay me for the rock, and I will do it for them. Yeah. So it's about $25 for residents to have one on their lawn. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe any other questions for Mr. Brown? Thank you, Gary. I really appreciate you coming. First of all, for all the work that you've done in this important initiative up to this point. You know, raising enough money to send 30 people through the assist training is really major. Just the work that you've done to raise awareness across the region for mental health and suicide awareness. It's, you know, it's priceless. You can't put a price on what you've done. So we really thank you for that. So I think that we need a motion to refer it back to staff for presentation. No? Sure. Okay. So the motion should be that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield receive and file the information and refer back to administration to bring back on the meeting of the 20th.
So move.
Thank you, Councillor Malcolm. And a second. Thank you, Councillor Day. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Gary. I really appreciate you coming here today, and I also want to thank that P9 Therapy in Brunswick.
Yeah, you'll find one on my site there.
Yeah,
So,
I'll reach out to them as well. They do some great work too.
All right. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
We should note, Your Worship, that there's been a donation made to the Boys and Girls Club for people in our community who work with young people to attend the assist training.
Oh, okay, and is that through Mr. Brown?
No, it was through the Boys and Girls Club.
Who was?
But it's a good program, and for leaders and whatnot to be able to know what signs to look for, it's very important.
It is. This is important work. Thank you, Councillor Day. Item 7B, Municipal Plan Bylaw Amendment Public Presentation. And we have Jennifer Brown here with us, I believe.
I'm here.
Oh, hi Jennifer. Thanks for coming here today. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I'm just going to share my screen really quickly. If you can confirm that you're able to see it, that'd be great.
Looks like we can see that.
Perfect. So this evening, I'm just here. You've already seen these amendments once. We're just going to review them again. So I'll keep it quite high level this evening to make sure that we're all on the same page and where we're going here. So just to give you a quick background, these amendments are referencing, excuse me, the infrastructure charge affecting Colonel Nays Boulevard and council's request to remove any references in the municipal plan, zoning bylaw, and subdivision bylaw with respect to those charges. In addition to those amendments to remove the infrastructure charge, there's also the need for a few housekeeping amendments to your zoning bylaw. In terms of background, I was in front of council on February 14th of this year to open the public comment period for the municipal plan amendment required to kind of get rid of that language around Colonel Nays in the municipal plan. Council's being asked to refer the municipal plan and zoning bylaw amendments this evening to PAC for their review and comment and to set a public hearing date. So we're essentially right in the middle of that amendment process. Subdivision bylaw amendments are approved like your other bylaws, so they do not require a public hearing. So we'll introduce the subdivision bylaws for consideration, either at the public hearing or one meeting after, just to make things flow a little bit easier and to make sure there's no confusion. Just to give you, again, a very high level overview. If there are questions and you need me to go through these one by one, I can certainly circle back, but for now, we'll just go over the highlights. Like I mentioned, there's amendments needed to remove the infrastructure charge language in your municipal plan, as well as some language changes needed in your subdivision bylaw. With respect to housekeeping amendments, we're looking at amending the definition for a seasonal dwelling to allow for exemption from the building bylaw, requiring only a development permit when your seasonal dwellings or your cottages or cabins or camps, however we want to phrase it, are below that 58.06 square meter measurement that's recently been introduced through the legislation. Seasonal dwellings will be added as a permitted use in the rural zone. We're going to add some conditions of use that kind of frame up how seasonal dwellings will be permitted in that rural zone. We also need to make amendments to accommodate mini and mobile homes. Essentially, we're allowing, through these amendments, the ideal here is to allow permitted as a secondary use to be used in garden suites through conditional approval in certain residential zones. We're requiring then PAC to enforce garden home standards through conditions, making sure that those mini homes or mobile homes that are being used as garden suites are behind the building line in the side or rear yard. Again, just some extra sections that will need to be amended in your zoning bylaw to accommodate this garden suite and mobile home used as garden suite addition. A quick note on process. So like I said, you're kind of right in the middle here. We're looking for council this evening to refer this package of amendments, meaning when I say package of amendments, I mean the municipal plan amendment, referring that to PAC, as well as referring the zoning bylaw amendments to PAC this evening for their review. PAC will see those at their April 4th meeting, and hopefully without any issue, we'll be back in front of council on April 11th with third reading April 25th. Just again, a note, that subdivision amendment package will then come in those April meetings for your review. And then with the intention of them being adopted by the end of April as well. Very quick presentation this evening, but the floor is definitely open for any questions or clarifications if you need them.
Thank you, Jennifer. Do we have any questions from council on Jennifer's presentation? No? I just want to emphasize that one of the reasons we're going through this process is for the removal of the frontage fees on Colonel Nace Boulevard. And in order to do that, we have to remove the reference to that from the, as Jennifer said, from the municipal plan bylaw, the zoning bylaw, etc. So that's one of the reasons that this process is taking a little bit longer than we had initially anticipated. But it's important that all of that language comes together so that there's no contradictory language in our bylaws. And the intention also is that once it's in place, that it be retroactive. Although I don't believe John, do we have any?
No, not the last time we talked, no.
Okay, so there's nothing that would currently be affected by that, but should something come up between now and when it's adopted, it would be retroactive to that.
Your worship, this is only for a period of time?
Yes.
Yeah. So we have a period of time, so then at that point in time, would we then put it back into the bylaws?
John, could you speak to that?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Just confirm, that's all.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's, the intention is that it be sort of a temporary drop in the, and I believe that you have to have a building permit issued.
Yeah, you have to have a building permit
Yeah.
issued before the end date.
There's
to be
a
effective.
sunset clause on it, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I call it a sunset clause.
Yes.
The principle of recovering costs for infrastructure is sound. However, Carol Lays Boulevard has been there more than a decade. We haven't seen development on it. Hopefully, we can spur a little bit.
It'd be nice, really nice.
Thank you, Councillor Day. Do we have any other further questions? Well, thank you, Jennifer. We appreciate your fine work as always. And I guess we'll see you again soon.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Okay, thanks, you too. Okay, so we'll move on to 7C, and education infrastructure. We have Suzanne Homan, who is the chair of the School Facilities Improvement Task Force. Welcome, Suzanne. Thank you for being here with us this evening.
Welcome. Thank you, Your Worship, Mr. Speaker, councillors, and guests. So I'm Suzanne Homan. I'm a member of the task force, like the mayor mentioned. I'm here to represent a greater group of volunteers. So this is a grassroots task force that was formed in September 2020. And really, how this came about was, I'm a mom, like many of the other people in the task force, and we were seeing, some talk in our community about a new school. So I moved to Bay-Westfield 14 years ago, just 1 year before my daughter was born. Then my son is now 10 years old. So when he was an infant, we went to a meeting at the primary school next door in the basement. And I was told at that meeting that my son was going to start kindergarten at the new school in Grand Bay. And so now he's about to finish Inglewood School, move on to River Valley, and there really hasn't been a lot of progress. So, I'm here representing a broader task force. So we got together and we started to, wonder, why this was. And so we thought, well, if you really want to do something about it, we're not just going to sit and complain, we want to take action. So we weren't really sure what we were going to do, but we decided to take action. So we formed a vision statement, which is really, we want to see essentially all of the kids in our community go to a school that meets the standard. And then we decided how we were going to operate. So we're going to come in and we're going to, work collaboratively, with all of the stakeholder groups, and we're willing to innovate. So there had been some solutions proposed, and we thought, well, we really just, let's just see what all of the possible solutions are and get them all out there. But when we do so, we will not compromise on the standards. Okay. Next slide.
If you just hit your space bar.
Oh, okay. Look at. Did I see?
I'll take it back, I'm sorry.
Must be a. Thank you. So the scope of this task force, when it was formed, was looking at a replacement for Grand Bay-Westfield, or Grand Bay Primary, my apologies, and Inglewood School. So Grand Bay Primary, 1947, 75 years old, one of the oldest schools in the province, has seen growth between 2015 and 2020 of 11%. Inglewood School, also, older school, 1960, large growth rate, 53%. That does include the introduction to French immersion at those schools during that time frame. So a little bit of a timeline of where we got here. I didn't go all the way back 10 years. Went back to 2015, 2016. So that was when the District Education Council, the DEC, put forth a policy 409 to recommend the closure of Grand Bay Primary and Inglewood School, and also Morna Heights School. So that was put in. This QBL score stands for quadruple bottom line. So that's an objective metric that the Department of the Government that looks at making recommendations for new schools comes up with over a source of criteria. So basically for QBL, the higher the better. Higher score means more likely to get to the top of the list for a new school. So back at that time, this proposal was ranked number 6 in the province. Following year, Grand Bay Primary lost their music room. Then you see how the ranking went through 2017, 2018, 2018, 2019. Number 2 and number 1. So in 2018, 2019, there was an error in the QBL calculation. I'm not exactly sure where they would have landed if it wasn't for that error, but still fairly high. Then all of a sudden, 2019, 2020, and this was really when the task force was formed, we see the big drop in the QBL scores. At the same time, as parents in the community, we were seeing the standards get even worse in the school. So now Inglewood lost their music room. They did gain a playground thanks to some great work from volunteers in our community. And we decided to form the task force and take action. So last year, not related to COVID-19, Inglewood lost their library. Grand Bay Primary had a portable installed. And there was also some significant structural issues with Grand Bay Primary. So you probably noticed driving by, there's been coding applied to the school and worked on on some infrastructure improvements. So this year in December, there was a stable departmental infrastructure priorities list issued, and Grand Bay, this project is ranked 13 now on that list. It's listed as a rationalization, which we assume means the closure of Grand Bay Primary and Inglewood School and construction of a new school. So it's 13 on the list. It could be 11 on the list if you count the 2 projects that have already been announced from there. There's also been some improvements. If you've been up to Inglewood lately, you've probably noticed the roadway has been paved and widened. They got their music room back. If you go around the back of the school, you'll see 2 new portables in there. And both schools had some much needed upgrades to their staff rooms. So if you can imagine, they only had 1 washroom for the staff at both schools, which is if you think about it, it may not seem like a big deal until you consider that teachers probably all take their break and go to the bathroom at the same time. So they got that. And they had some bathroom upgrades as well for the students. So, going through the timeline and just seeing, how we got to where we are, we thought, well, let's assess where we are current state, not compared to other projects, not comparing to other schools, but let's just compare to what the government standard is and see where we're at. So a couple of the big gaps that really stand out are the ease of access. So this is, standards for entries at grade, ramps when required, barrier-free access throughout. So if you go by Grand Bay Primary or you look inside the doors, that school's definitely not accessible. For those that like pictures, here's a picture of the entrance at Inglewood School. There's no way to access that school right now, so that's a big concern. Also the gymnasium, so there's provincial standards for gymnasiums in schools for double gyms and single gyms. So if you want to look at the gymnasium at Grand Bay Primary and Inglewood, you'll be looking for a very long time because there is no gymnasium at either of these schools. So they do their phys ed in what was listed, this was an older clip from the town's website, as a multi-purpose room. And this is a picture of the multi-purpose room at Inglewood School. So you can just see where the height of the ceiling is. I got back this weekend from a provincial basketball tournament where my son was playing in Harvey. So this is a big point of discussion in our family is the height of the ceiling in what my son calls the gym. And just going through and visiting some other facilities, it was a real eye-opener for me of what our purpose is on this task force and how much we have lowered our standards over the years just to cope with the facilities that we have, but this is definitely not a gym. So, just in summary, these are just a few of the items. It's not completely comprehensive, but I mean, yes, last year when we would have filled this out, it would have been all no's. In the Inglewood column, they did get their music room back. So here's a photo from the back of Inglewood School that shows the portables. So there you will notice that there is access to the portables from in behind the school, which is great. My son tells me that this door takes you in to access both portables. However, it doesn't take you to the rest of the school, so where the washrooms are or where the multi-purpose room is. And so just, the purpose of the presentation today was just to bring awareness to the council of this task force. We're here, despite my son being, in grade 5 and moving on to River Valley. I'm committed to sticking around, as are the other members of the task force. And, we really want to see this through. So we've been meeting with the District Education Council. We've been continuing to work in collaboration with this council and hope to continue that further. And we're, next steps are I guess to be determined, but we'll see what makes sense and where it goes. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Suzanne. Thank you very much. Some of those statistics are fairly sobering. 30% of the students in Inglewood are in portables.
Close to 30%, yes.
And the other thing that really sort of stood out to me was the accessibility issue. So I know I've heard this story, and you can confirm it for me, that we do have some members, some family members who are unable to access their children's school. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. I hear those same stories.
Yeah, and if maybe somebody was in a wheelchair and their sibling was not, that they would have to end up going to 2 separate schools because of the accessibility issue.
I had an interesting conversation about it with my son yesterday, and he, when he saw this presentation, he immediately had the fear of, breaking his leg or having some sort of incident, not being able to continue to go to school with his friends. I don't see how, you could, in a wheelchair with a physical disability, maneuver through those 2 schools.
And there would be an issue, being separated from the friends in your own neighborhood as well.
Absolutely. No, my heart goes out to anybody that was in that situation.
Well, I'll open the floor up to council to see.
I had a
Councilor
question, for the portables, do they have washrooms for the portables or no?
I believe not. Suzanne, do you know?
No, the portable, no, but they can access, so the, how do I go back? So if this entryway is where all the students would go into the playground, I believe after school, so they can access the washrooms without going outside of Inglewood.
Okay.
Not sure if that's the case at Grand Bay Primary.
Is it wheelchair accessible?
No,
Okay.
no, there's you have to go down a set of stairs.
Sad.
Suzanne, do you know if they're adding more portables to the schools this coming year?
That's an excellent question, Councillor, and I am not sure, so I would, we're going to be at the school tomorrow afternoon for a tour, so I will ask them if they know what their registration is going to be next year.
We keep, and I'm part of your, I don't think I've made it to a meeting, but this has been a long drawn out process. And I don't know how we would ever get, or how we push to get a feasibility study done. Like the report that we had done many years ago is all outdated. And I'm thinking we really need to look at the whole school structure in this community. And we've got Grand Bay Primary, we've got Inglewood, we've talked for years about a new school. And then we've also talked about adding 1 to 5 to River Valley. And then there is a school at the other end of our, Westfield School, yes. We really need to push, and I don't know, again, I'm just, feasibility study. What would it cost to fix these schools to put them to where we need them to be? What's the cost of a new school? And that's what we had, and we got really excited because the cost to fix, and in those days we had 3 schools, it was Morna Heights as well. And the cost to build a new school was so much cheaper than doing anything with the existing buildings. And then we need to have a look at River Valley. Is it possible to add 1 to 5 to River Valley? Do they have the land, the structure of the school? And what would be the cost? And Inglewood, Westfield, where does it play into everything? And I really find it hard because these people have been pushing and trying to do everything they can to bring this to the forefront. And all we seem to be doing is spinning our wheels. And how do I put it, you and the rest of the team have gone above and beyond trying to sort this all out and make people aware of the situation here in Grand Bay. And I really don't know where we go next.
Thank you, Councillor Day. I think one of the key pieces of your presentation, Suzanne, was how you talked about how you're willing, the task force is willing to innovate. So we want to solve the problem, and we sort of future back from there. What are potential solutions to the problem, and be creative in that, but not compromise the standards that our children require. And I think one of the key points that we need to highlight as well, but it's not, about the kids and their educational experience and educational outcomes, but it's also an economic development issue for the town as a whole. People make business and home buying decisions based on the schools and the community. So that's it's important for the future growth of the town that we move this file forward. And I know that Speaker Oliver is completely committed to it, and the task force is completely committed to it. So I'm very thankful that we have such a good team doing some heavy lifting in this regard, for sure. So Jim, I know that this is part of your pillar too, the economic development piece. Do you have any questions or comments?
Just a question. First of all, I applaud you and your volunteer team for keeping this in the forefront for us all. The mayor is absolutely correct. One of the key factors that people moving from away make when they're looking at a potential community to live in is proximity to hospitals, proximity to schools, in that order. But I do have a question, and that is, I remember back in 2010, there was an attempt that was referred to earlier about closing the Morna Heights School and these two schools and building one new school. But if there is a solution to not compromise the quality of the standards by not building a new standalone school, but as Councillor Day said, adding on to an existing very nice middle school with a lot of amenities, especially sports amenities nearby, is that being looked at as a possible solution by your committee, or are you stuck on a brand new standalone school?
Yeah, and so I think, just thank you for your question, and I think to Councillor Day's point about a feasibility study is, we're here to ask the questions. I don't know that we're really in a position to provide the answers, and so I think that's absolutely something that we would consider is, as a potential solution to look at to see if it's feasible. I think somebody that, does that sort of thing for a living would probably need to assess that. And then I think also, this task force, although we try to go out and get the voice of the community, it's not perhaps as comprehensive as we think it is. And so it's, it would be great to hear from more residents of Grand Bay-Westfield about how they would feel about that as a solution of having, a K-8 school, in the, at the essentially the hub of the community, and then also a K-5 school in Westfield.
Education is not part of our mandate. However, it impacts what you're doing. It impacts capacity. It impacts on mentality. And it impacts on climate change. I haven't figured it out quite yet, but I'll get there. And no, I don't want to see any of our revenue money spent on something that is not part of our mandate. However, I don't know what a feasibility study would cost to do and provide the answers. And it might be how we have to go so that these folks and our MLA, Bill Oliver, who's really supportive on this, and us as a group finally have the answers. And how can I put it? I don't want to be sitting here in 4 years and having the same thing come to us. In 4 years' time, and I love your expression, Mr. CAO, kicking it down the road. Well, I'm tired of kicking this one down the road because the only one that suffers is our kids. And our kids deserve to have an education the same as anybody else in this province. And so I would be open, and I don't know what pocket of money or what the cost would be. But I think I'd like to know what the cost would be and whether or not we would be able to do that. And then we have more information for our MLA, more information for you, your worship, when you go to meet with the Premier. More information for this committee, who's trying to do everything they can to bring it to the forefront, even with political. And I mean, Bill, how many times, where is Bill? There he is. How many times and how many schools have you toward the MLAs and everything in through the community?
Well, we've been here three different days.
Yeah, and I mean, Bill has been fantastic that every time that there's been an MLA come here, he makes sure they get to see the schools. But we don't have the answers. So, and I find it frustrating.
Thank you, Councillor Day. John, can you speak to the feasibility study bit?
I can share an experience and then that may provide a direction forward. When I was in another community, we had access to health issues. And we had some dysfunction with the ward and stuff like that. So we ended up doing a partnership between the province, the health authority, and the town, where we cost shared the feasibility study. I would not recommend council bear 100% of the cost, but you know, if it may help move us up the priority list, perhaps that's something that we could cost share with the province to demonstrate our seriousness. But you know, off the cuff, it would be challenging to come up with a good recommendation, but that may be something, and perhaps I could contact or work with Mr. Oliver's office over the next week or so to see what might be feasible that he could take back to Fredericton to demonstrate the community seriousness that the standard of schools here really is below the provincial standard, and what it would cost to move it forward. I don't know, this, would that work?
So I'm certainly willing to take that break and have a discussion there.
Would you need a motion for that?
Yeah, I think that something to expect that direct the CAO to work with the MLA. Can you help me out, Troy? Work with the CAO to determine if there's a methodology to have or determine a process to have a feasibility study conducted within the town regarding educational facilities. Sorry. That's really awkward, I'm sorry, Nicole, I'm sorry. That's awkward. Gosh.
The cost share, yeah.
Yeah, well, the process, yeah, and that's understood to be a cost share, so squeeze in caution. We'll work out the wording, but the spirit of the resolution, I think, captures it. Would that work for you, Suzanne?
Yeah, absolutely, thank you.
Mr. Speaker?
Definitely.
Okay. Sorry, Your Worship.
Then I'll move it.
Thank you, Councillor Day. Is that,
I thought you had a question.
no?
Oh, sorry.
No. So we have a motion by Councillor Day. Do we have a second?
I'd be pleased to second.
Your Worship.
Councillor Balcom. Any questions or comments on that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you. And we will, Suzanne, I want to thank you also for coming and putting that together and keeping this on the forefront of everybody's mind. It's an important initiative, and we appreciate all the heavy lifting that you're doing. So,
Thank you, appreciate the opportunity to come speak
thank
to
you
you.
very much. So we'll do a second motion that the Council of the Town of Grand Bay-Westfield accept the information as presented. We have a motion. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole. May I have a second? Councillor McIntosh Lawrence. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. We are on to 7D, Indigenous names in Grand Bay-Westfield area. And we have Ron Tremblay and Amanda LeBlanc presenting here today. Oh, I see Amanda, hello. And, and there's, then we have Chief Ron there, Chief Morningstar Burning. Thank you for joining us here today. We really appreciate it. We're looking forward to your presentation, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor and Council and guests. I just want to take this time to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to share a little bit of wisdom and knowledge I have pertaining to our traditional names here in Wolastoquk, in our homeland. I just want to read a couple paragraphs here before I start and to explain the research of the name that I found for the area of Grand Bay. Under the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action that the Reconciliation Canadian governments and the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples in Section 43, we call upon the federal, the provincial, territorial, and municipal governments to fully adopt and to implement the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and the framework for reconciliation. In the Article 13(1) of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples states that Indigenous peoples have the right to revitalize, use, develop, and transmit to future generations their languages, their traditions, their philosophies, writing systems, and literatures, and to designate and retain their own names for community, places, and persons. So I was fortunate to grow up in a home of my siblings. I have 4 brothers and 5 sisters, and we're all very fluent in our language, and we grew up in a home that was very respectful to our language. And I've done plenty of research in the past 30 years of developing curriculum for the province as well as our communities. And I've done much research on the old names, place names of rivers, lakes, streams, and very special places that's within our territory. And I'm going to share my screen now of what I found here. Give me 1 second, please. And I'm wondering if you can see what I have here.
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, under the, and I received this from the Ganon map. It's an old document that, from the chocolate factory, Mr. Ganon, the original owner, had written a lot of the traditional names, and he traveled all across New Brunswick and parts of Maine to document some of the names. And this name is placed near the area where Grand Bay is. And as you see, it's Back-we-de-Beg. And how I have broken down the word Back-we means a newly encountered after a long absence in this sense, a familiar, welcoming place. So Back-we is she and he comes back to a friend or family after a long time of being apart. So as you see, that word Back-we focuses on the area of where they would return to meet as a family or friends or as a nation. And Tabagak, it is mean where the cold water is. So the word Back-we Tabagak is a familiar place of gathering with friends and family after a long time of being apart, where the cold water is. So this is my proposal for the area of Grand Bay, that this word will be considered by the residents of Grand Bay and the surrounding areas. So I want to thank you for your time, unless Amanda has a few things to offer too. Thank you.
Amanda?
you and Ron. Thanks again for the invite here tonight. I'm very honored. So I have the privilege and the honor of learning from Chief Tremblay, and I guess I've heard and watched a lot of the chatter going on here in this beautiful town, and I will remain to think that because it's not all beautiful. But the intent of this is to educate people because people are asking. They want to know what this land was traditionally known as before it became colonized. So I want to kind of preface with that, like this is for education. But there are a lot of people who want to remain, I guess, in good spirits and really take UNDRIP into another level. They want to know how they can implement the calls to action and what they can do as residents. And this is one of the things, asking for the education and on kudos to town council making it available to them. But I do want to say that some people are really, really nervous, I guess, about having an Indigenous word be the potential name. But I'm sorry, guys, it already exists here. We're about 100 feet from Willistic Drive. And we have Narapis, which is also a Willistic word, and Quispamsis is also Willistic. Quispamsis is Willistic. I think I'm right there, Ron. So it does already exist in our everyday vocabulary. So I don't know that everybody would be open to a very long word, like Ron had just explained to us that most areas are named based on what they were used for. So this was a place of gathering. To be an operating name for the province of New Brunswick, I can see how that might be a logistical nightmare. But I think I'm just really grateful for people being open to just learning about it and maybe coming up with some other alternatives that they'd be comfortable with. And I'll share this. I did mention this to Ron and say, well, do you think this would be appropriate? So my father-in-law, who was a lifelong resident here, I raised my husband, his family here, they're now Rosse, had suggested, well, why not Willistic Shores? They said, that sounds great. So it has a Willistic, it has the traditional, we use the proper spelling, which we already have on all our street signs, but also having an English word, so it's palatable for people. It's something that everybody can spell easily, you can say it easily. But coming from him, I was so proud to know that he actually listens to me sometimes when we're talking around the dinner table. But I guess just people remaining open-minded, and you can be creative with it. So if there are other words that you're interested in knowing about, like I'm willing to take it to Ron because unfortunately I'm not a fluent speaker, I'm still learning. But we're willing to educate people on, I guess, what you're willing to accept. It is a journey, it's a long process to learn about things that people didn't know existed until recent years, unfortunately. But I guess get creative would be my challenge to residents and those who are suggesting names for the operating name of Entity 51. That seems to be pretty popular too, who knows? But I guess fill you in.
Thank you, Amanda. I think, John, you have a question?
Yeah, this is either for Chief Tremblay or Amanda for you. Now, you had some base words there. Sorry, I don't see the word there, so I can't pronounce it. Pilkwe, where people gather. Now, would it be acceptable to have an abbreviated name like this rather than the longer one? Yeah, the third one down, Pilkwe, to friends or family after long absence. Like, would just having that base word be acceptable, or does it need to be in a complete, almost like what a sentence is up there?
Like what is possible, and I'll spell it for you here, and I'll describe. Our language is very particular, and it's detailed, and it really explains the purpose of the place. Let me. And if you put this at the end, the KUK at the end of Bakwigug, that means the place of. So the KUK is actually a locative, or what we call a locator, meaning that at the place, so that Bakwi would define a place where you go to greet and to be with family and friends. And this would be a possibility here,
Okay.
so.
Can I just?
Yes.
Sorry, Chief Tremblay, I just want to, you and I had emailed that you would be willing to help the naming committee with Indigenous names when we get to that point.
Yes, for sure. For sure. And I did talk to Amanda about what her father-in-law had suggested, and you would just at the end of the word Wolustog, you would put Zenogil, and the word Zenogil means at the banks of. So it would define at the banks of the Wolustog. So that's a possibility too.
Councillor Day?
Mr. Tremblay, I was wondering, or Chief Tremblay, could you say the suggestion you've got here of a familiar place of gathering?
Okay. Bakwi-Tabagig. So that's Bakwi-Tabagig.
So K sounds like a G.
Pardon me?
The K sounds like a G, just to help you kind of follow.
Oh,
phonetically.
okay.
The P is a
A B.
B sound, and the
K is
and
a
yeah,
G.
Bakwi-Tabagig. And this was documented by, as I mentioned, from Ganon, who had traveled, I think, in the late 19th century or early 20th century around New Brunswick, and then he would meet with the locals, Indigenous people, and he would ask them about the place names and so on. And this is on his old map, in fact, that he had published years and years ago. So.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Toole?
I just want to thank both of you, and as a member of council and a member of the naming committee, and this is kind of what I'm envisioning is what this process should be about, which is community building and education, and we're all learning about each other and kind of more about our region. So I really want to thank you both. This has been educational and really helpful, and kind of it's the second presentation we've had about our region and the history of our region. This is what I envisioned for this whole process, so I'm really pleased. This has been informative. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And as John had mentioned, I'd be willing to sit on a board to go over the few names, and if there's any, need for me to assist that process, I will be here available. So.
Thank you, Ron and Amanda. I just want to say that just the whole concept behind that name, a familiar place of gathering and coming back to family and friends, I think it really embodies who our community really is at heart. So, thank you. We are all learning, as you said, Amanda, and some of us are way at the beginning of the path, like myself, but I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your knowledge with us so that we can continue that path of truth and reconciliation and learning about the truth about our past. So, thank you. Do we have any other questions or comments from council? Well, I'd like to thank you both again, and Chief Ron, I'm sure we'll be in touch because I'm sure we'll need additional background and assistance as we go forward. So thank you very much.
Okay, take care.
Thank you.
Thank you again. Bye.
So, the motion is that the Council of the Town of Grand Bay-Westfield receive and file the information as presented. Thank you, Councillor McIntosh Lawrence. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Day. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. 7E, naming of Grand Bay-Westfield and town image. We have former Deputy Mayor Mike Likely here with us this evening. Welcome, Mr. Likely. The floor is yours.
Thank you. It's a little different sitting on this side of the podium. And I guess I must have missed it. Did you change your start time? I didn't see an agenda, so I came at 7:30.
Yes, we
Apologize
start
if
at 7.
You started 7 now, I apologize. Grand Bay has been Grand Bay for over 400 years when it was discovered by Samuel de Champlain. Westfield has been Westfield for 236 years, since 1786, when it was determined as one of the original parishes of the county. After much fanfare and emotional disruption, Grand Bay and Westfield were amalgamated as one community. The town of Grand Bay-Westfield 24 years ago in 1998. Grand Bay-Westfield does not require or need a name change. Hundreds of years of history are represented by Grand Bay-Westfield. The town does not need a new name. Council is responsible to provide the best services possible with the revenue and tax dollars available, and to obtain adequate and deserving provincial and federal funding and support. In addition, council is responsible for assuring tax dollars are spent wisely, establishing budgets, assuring adequate education facilities, cost sharing and maintenance of designated highway, Route 177, fair share of property tax returned to the town, recreation and recreation facilities, housing development, including low rent and homelessness, emergency services, police, fire, ambulance, commercial development, representation on the Regional Service Commission, Regional Facilities Commission, and Envision, sewerage systems, street repairs and maintenance, new community boundaries, new community budget, funding from the province for the addition of Westfield West. Not on this list is to rename the town. You do not have a mandate to do this. None of you ran to be elected on, I'm going to change the name of the town. Council has proposed and launched a naming contest. The mechanics of this contest will result in considerable expense and manpower, which distracts from the important business of your core responsibilities. You are attempting to have a vote to the magnitude of a municipal election without the participation of Elections New Brunswick. This will be controversial, expensive, divisive, and time-consuming. It is not necessary. Do not do this. Stop the contest. Leave the name alone and get to work on the things you were elected to do and things we need to accomplish for the success of Grand Bay-Westfield. Why are you doing this?
So you're asking?
I'm asking the question.
Well, Mike, there's an amalgamation taking place. We have two distinct communities coming together. Each of those communities is going to retain its name and its unique character. Now, we are not imposing the name of Grand Bay-Westfield on the part of Westfield West that's coming in. Everybody is going to have a choice in a democratic process. This is consultation at its highest. And I think that's important. The people are going to have a voice. One person, two people, three people are not going to impose the name of the governing body. Let me be clear, it's the governing body only on everybody else. If you live in Grand Bay-Westfield, you'll still continue to live in Grand Bay-Westfield. If you live in Neripis, you will still continue to live in Neripis.
Well, excuse me, Neripis is part of Grand Bay-Westfield now. And Westfield West has the name Westfield in it. So why are we going through all of this when we already have everybody in Grand Bay-Westfield?
Well, I think it's important that everybody has a say in this, including the 55% of Westfield West that's coming together with the town of Grand Bay-Westfield.
Well, just from experience, when I was on council.
It's a consultative process, it's a democratic process. And it's important that everyone have their fair say in this.
To whose importance?
Well, there are.
You're destroying 600 years of history of an area here to bring in an amalgamated group that already has the name Westfield in it. They already live in Westfield West. What do you want to?
And the town of Granby, the Bay-Westfield will be on the list of names. And should the community decide that they want to retain that name will be retained.
Well,
but the people will decide.
Well, I thank you for your time. I've expressed my opinion. I'm shocked at the money and time that we're spending on something when there are so many important things we should be doing in this community. And you've become all obsessed with this, engaged in it. The community is up in arms. Leave it alone. Get on with the things, the school, housing. The things that we need in this community are the things we should be working on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Likely, for your presentation. We have any questions or comments? John?
Mr. Likely, you're going to talk about the Telegraph Journal as well?
Well, I don't know if I want to right now, because I will say I'm disappointed in the existing council on the relationship with our local media. I understand that we have a new media person that's working on this, but the previous council spent 3 years at least working on our image, working on trying to have the other communities in our neighborhood around the southern part of the province and elsewhere in the province and recognize us as a growing, advancing community. We sent a survey out, a number of people, Rosse, Crispam Sis, our own community, to find out what they thought of Westfield, Grand Bay Westfield. And the results came back that people didn't even know we existed in a couple of areas. So we embarked with consulting, spending money, changing the image. Behind you is the new image that was come up with. There was a lot of time and effort and money spent on that. And you open up the Telegraph Journal, and any article about Grand Bay Westfield, which we were hoping would be a positive experience, has a picture of a sign that was taken down a year or 2 years ago, paint peeling off it. It was disgusting. And I've discussed this with some of you people on council. And what I'm disappointed in is it kind of got fluffed off as, well, so what? Who cares? So as a past member of council, I'm embarrassed and I'm insulted that we didn't pay more attention to that and force that newspaper to step up to it. I mean, it would be a simple thing to do. Take a camera, take a picture of it, go into the archives at the Telegraph Journal and upgrade it. Yeah. And I understand that's going on now. So all I want to say is those are the things that, I mean, we just can't let those things drop and fall to the wayside and say, oh, we tried, we called somebody, it didn't happen. No, we've got to push hard on those things and make those things happen. Our image is the important thing we need here.
Oh, completely agree, Mike, and I don't believe that we've let it drop to the wayside, and I don't think anybody thinks it's not a priority at all. In fact, I'll have John probably has some more information.
No, I just want to say, Mr. Likely, that when you're on council, you had asked me to talk with the TGA. I talked with different levels of the Telegraph Journal. Later, I asked our communications person at the time, who was part-time, if they could look after it, and he sent them information as well. New council came on board. I followed up. Troy has followed up more than once. Our new communications person has followed up. We saw a new reporter this morning. We followed up. I don't know what more we can do with the Telegraph Journal. Like you, sir, they don't always return our calls, but we have been pushing. And the reporters have been receptive, but above that, I've not had a response. And this is, I encouraged you in one call, if maybe perhaps a letter to the editor might be appropriate. I agree with you, it's entirely embarrassing, the picture that they use. We have sent them other photos. We have sent them our new logo. That was sent after the previous council that you're the deputy mayor on passed. All that stuff was sent. So, if you know someone better that we can talk to, that's great. But I've come across a bit of a wall. Perhaps our communications person will be more successful, but it's not been for a lack of effort, Mr. Ludlow.
I would say tell them not to write about us at all then and put false information in the paper and seedy looking pictures as they are. We'd rather have no visibility than that kind. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Likely. Yes,
I have a question, Mr. Likely. I understand that Grand Bay has been called Grand Bay for the past 400 years. I'm just wondering if you know what the area was called before that?
Well, apparently it was called a native land, an Aboriginal name.
Right, do you know what that is?
No, I don't.
Thank you.
I couldn't hear from that.
yes, Deputy Mayor Toole?
The CAO, maybe speak to the costs and the time, because I think just to appease the presenters and people watching as to the,
Oh, for the cost of
because
the,
it, just
of
so
the
that,
process?
the process, because the process has been quite well managed and done by volunteers. I just want to assure everybody who's watching.
The current process?
Yes, the
Yeah, so we've had 2 mail-outs, I think is what we're gonna have. We spent, I think it was $7.50 on the Entity 51 website, which stores a lot of information. There's been my time, the communications person's time, the chief's time most of that time has been spent around frequently asked questions. We're anticipating some expense for software to do a ranked choice ballot. So all that is about maybe $2,500 is what we're anticipating. I think that's what we budget, or maybe I put in a little bit extra amount there for that, but somewhere in that neighborhood. Now, last summer, we had a student travel around the town and they had new logo stickers. And the student even covered up old Town of Grand Bay logos. And as I assured the previous council and this council, we're not going to do it all at one time. There will be some mandatory sign changes. A new sign will have to go out east of the Narrapis Marsh, where the new boundary will start. So that's one sign, and that sign is kind of rotting, the one that's there. And we do have signs that need to be replaced. They've been in there a long time. As I told the previous council, do them all at one go is expensive. We're going to do the most visible ones first, and then work our way inside. And now's the good time too, because with the new branding, now's the time to do the changes. And so it's all changes that would have had to be done anyways.
Even if the name remains Grand Bay-Westfield.
The changes still have to go ahead to align with the new corporate brand. So the changes had to happen anyways.
Thank you, John. Any other questions or comments? The motion on the table is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield receive and file the information as presented. Thank you, Councillor Bailmans. Do I have a second? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Thank you very much. We'll move on to item 8, minutes of previous meeting. 8A, regular council minutes of February 28, 2022. The motion is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield adopt the minutes of the regular meeting of February 28, 2022 as presented. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Day. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you. Item 9, unfinished business. There being none.
Your worship, yes, I'd just like to ask staff for a follow-up to the proposal of a resident on Apple Hill Road for a land swap, Mr.
Right. John.
So, Councillor Balcom, excuse me. The process is that proposal and the needs there are taken to engineering to come up with a design. Once that design is complete, we'll work with the proponents, and then once there's an agreement in principle, we'll bring it back to council. So there's engineering work, and then there's talking with the proponents, and once all that stuff is done, we'll bring it back to council.
Thank you.
Thank you for that update, John. Item 10, bylaws. 10A, Municipal Bylaw, number 121 amendment. The motion is that the Council of the Town of Grand Bay-Westfield establish the date of April 11th, 2022 as the date for a hearing of objections for a proposed amendment to the Municipal Plan Bylaw number 121 and amendments to Zoning Bylaw 122 to be held in the Grand Bay Room, 609 River Valley Drive at 7:30 p.m. And to refer the draft bylaw number 121A, draft bylaw 122B, and draft bylaw 124 to the Planning Advisory Committee for written views and recommendations for council's consideration at the April 11th, 2022 council meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Malcolm. Do I have a second? Councillor Day, thank you very much. Any questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you. 11, new business recommendations. 11A, PAC nomination. We had a couple of applications for this, both with great qualifications, and I would just like to thank the people that applied, and just PAC is a key committee of council, so I was thankful to see that we had some good applications. And
Your Worship, I would like to make a motion, please. I would like to move that council appoint Mr. Andrew Miller, one of the applicants, to the vacant position on the current PAC.
okay, do we have a second on that?
Second.
Thank you, John. Councillor Malcolm, I'll get you to speak to that motion as a
Please,
member.
I'd be pleased to. Councillor, I'll be wearing two hats in my comments. I'd also like to recognize my boss on the PAC, the chair, Mr. Jim Burke, is in the audience. As council's rep on PAC and as champion of the Economic Development and Population Growth Committee, economic growth means a lot of different things. Businesses coming, people moving, building houses. This is what our vision is. Our number one priority as a council for our strategic plan is population growth. We are anticipating that this will happen with a lot of good work, more horsepower to come. We're anticipating that PAC will have additional work and applications coming in for possible variances. And looking at the current skill sets of who is on the current PAC, a lawyer, an engineer, an accountant, and manufacturing background. Mr. Andrew Miller's background in 30 years of sales and business development will greatly augment PAC and indirectly council and our overall vision to increase population and economic growth. And it would be a perfect fit, and that's why I think the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Malcolm. Do we have any questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. I just want to again extend my thanks to the applicants. We had some very qualified people put their names forward, and I just would encourage, that the other applicants and anybody else that serving the town is important. It encourages and develops the vibrancy of where we live, and we basically need more of you. So thank you again. 11B, Canada Games Aquatic Centre. The motion is that the council for the town of Grand Bay-Westfield support the donation of we were going to change the
I would just suggest, Your Worship
Yeah.
and council, please table this issue. The Canada Aquatic Game Centre is requesting further $9,225, which is our share of $225,000. And I would ask that the general manager and the chair come present to council, and that a decision be made at that time.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense. This is an unbudgeted expense,
Yes.
and I think it's important to have the chair and general manager come and speak to the issues that they're having and how they're going to get their fiscal house in order before we go ahead and make this commitment to unbudgeted funds. So thank you. So could I have a motion to table? Thank you, Councillor McIntosh Lawrence. May I have a second? Any questions or comments on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you. 11C, River Valley Drive and Englewood Drive crosswalk. The motion is that the town of Grand Bay-Westfield authorize staff to purchase the recommended crosswalk treatment for the installation of a new pedestrian crosswalk on River Valley Drive at the northern end of Englewood Drive. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole. Do I have a second? Councillor Day. John, could you speak to the motion, please?
So the legislation surrounding the installation of crosswalks has changed recently. Previously, you had to meet a standard that involved the number of people using it. Now the standard is just, does it connect an ongoing trail system or transportation corridor for walking? Anyways, that's a busy intersection, and that definitely meets it because we want to cross from one side to the other side to attach to get to the trail. So we're just asking council to approve it. It meets all the legislative requirements now.
That's great. And this is important, and it particularly became evident during COVID when people were using the trails in a one-way fashion, that there wasn't a safe manner to cross. So this is, and we now know that you can't predict the future, and we need to plan for future pandemics or the continuation of this one. So this is an important infrastructure investment. Do we have any questions or comments on the motion? No. All in favor? Aye. Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you, Council. 11D, Point Pro generating license application process and public hearings. The motion is that the town of Grand Bay-Westfield authorize the mayor to sign the letter of support for the power reactor operating license renewal for the Point Pro nuclear generating station on behalf of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield. We have a motion. Thank you, Councillor Day. We have a second. Thank you, Councillor Billings. Any question or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you. Item 12, bills for payment. The motion is that the Council of the Town of Grand Bay-Westfield authorize the March 14th, 2022 bills for payment as presented in the amount of $427,958.43. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole. Do I have a second? Councillor Day, thank you. Do we have any questions or comments on the motion? Councillor McIntosh-Lawrence.
Number 27, the Loyola City towing for the bus removal. Is that at the, was that not at the property owner's expense?
There's a process to get there. I don't know if you recall, Councillor, but the town engaged Loyalist Towing to do that. I think that came before council, if I recall. And so we contracted them, we're responsible for the initial payment. Marcia today sent out an invoice to the property owner for them to reimburse the town. Now, just to go further, should there be a problem collecting, then it'll be referred to Service New Brunswick, and they will have to demonstrate the work that was done to collect the monies before it's put on their property tax roll. Okay.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you. Item 13, consent agenda. 13A, PAC minutes, February 7th, 2022. 13B, naming recommendation, Amanda Ham. 13C, local government reform update, transition facilitator. 13D, local government reform update, planning services. 13E, cost benefit analysis, snow control. The motion is that the Council of the Town of Grand Bay-Westfield receive and file the consent agenda items for March 14th, 2022.
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Balcom. We have a second. Oh, thank you, Councillor Bellmans. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you. Item 14, council reports. Let's start with Councillor Bellmans today.
Oh yeah, Pro Kids, and we're working on a new logo, but Pro Kids, and next week we'll have a picture of it and talk about.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, John. Councillor Bellmans.
Thank you, Your Worship. Last Monday, I attended our monthly PAC meeting, and the week before that, I had a virtual meeting with the Nature Trust Conservancy and the local organization Friends of Blueberry Hill. It was a very informative, interactive dialogue, and based on what they are hoping to do, and working in partnership with others. I have suggested to them that they write to the town to make a presentation to share that their vision with both council and with the public. So you can expect a letter coming to the town office.
That's great, thank you, Councillor Bellman. Councillor Day.
I'm gonna take Councillor Bailman's line. Because of my husband being ill, I haven't been able to do too much last couple of weeks.
I'm sure the kids at Cooking Club miss you.
Pardon me?
I'm sure the kids at Cooking Club miss you.
I miss them. We're going to Amsterdam on Wednesday. Yes.
Very
Yeah.
nice. Well, I'm sure we'll look forward to hearing all about that. Thank you,
Yeah.
Councillor Day. Councillor McIntosh Lawrence.
I don't really have much as far as my council hat goes, but my FBC rep committee, really the only thing was the past week organizing some March break activities for the kids. That's it.
That's good. Thank you very much. And Deputy Mayor Toole.
I guess my time's been spent with being on the local governance reform, help making sure that our voice is heard and that we're figuring out what's going on with other municipalities around the province, mainly through the UMND Municipalities and New Brunswick Committee, where we can see kind of where we're positioned with respect to others, and can say we're doing a good job and we're making sure that everybody's aware and people are applauding our transparency. So just it's a lot of work. It seems to be kind of the main thing we're doing at this point with local governance, but I'm really appreciative of the time that our council and our mayor and our CAO have spent on this file.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole. I appreciate that. I know it's been a lot of heavy lifting for everybody, staff and council included. The file is huge. It's going to continue to be huge. We're just at the beginning of it. But we'll continue to work hard and advocate for the best outcomes for everybody in our greater community. So thank you very much. Item 15, business arising from committee of the whole. There being none, item 16, adjournment. The motion is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield adjourn the meeting at 8:27 p.m.
So
Thank you, Councillor Bailman. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor McIntosh Lawrence. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you, everybody.